Okay, I've got the recorder on.
Okay, we're meeting on the findings of fact, conclusions on the application for appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission approval regarding the Colter, I hope I say this right, Yde, appeal of the denial by the Zoning Administrator for a motocross track in a residential agriculture 2 RA2 zone located at the end of South Carivista Drive, Southwest Broadway Street, west 55th West, Idaho Falls, Bonneville County, Idaho. Let's see, Austin, are you going to present these or Steve?
I'm going to present them.
Okay.
So as stated, we're going over the wide appeal of the denial by the zoning administrator for a motocross track in the residential RA2 zone. The appeal to the commission was made by Stan and Kathy Gammon. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this matter July 29th, 2020 and recommended approval of the appeal, determining the zoning administrator erred in his decision that a motocross track was not an allowed use in a residential agriculture RA2 zone. The vote was 4-3 after a vote by Chairman Beck to break the tie. A subsequent appeal hearing was held by the county commissioners on September 21st, 2020. Should be noted that all the things that were submitted were included in the record and reviewed. So the property is currently designated as a rural residential area, which is slated for permanent residential culture. The property is located south of West Broadway Street and west of 55th West, Idaho Falls, Idaho, at the end of South Carivista Drive. The property is currently designated as RA2 rural residential on the zoning map. The property was rezoned to this designation on October 5th, 2016 from A1 agriculture. One of the things that notes in the RA2 zone is that permitted uses and activities will be controlled to ensure a high standard for single family residential use. The permitted uses in the RA2 zone are listed in this. It should be noted upon examination of the RA2 zone that a motocross track is not listed as an expressly allowed use. The parcel is about 11.63 acres in size and square in shape. And the appellant argued that the Planning and Zoning Commission disregarded the buffer zone B1 in their decision. It should be noted the buffer zone is not an applicable matter in this case because the property is not zoned B1. Just to review some of the things that make the conclusions unique, go over the first one here, which states, based on the testimony received, it was an administrator and other administrators' officers' opinion and interpretation that a motocross track is not allowed within the RA2 zone. In section 1417 of the Bonneville County zoning ordinance, it states, uses of land which are not expressly permitted within a zone are expressly prohibited therein. It is the administrative opinion that a motocross track is not an expressly permitted use in the RA2 zone. Therefore, it is an expressly prohibited use. It was established in the hearing that off-road vehicles have been used casually for recreation in the area for many years, but not on a defined track created with earth-moving equipment. It is the administrative opinion that the scale of the requested use is not in harmony with section 1901 of the RA2 zone in the Bonneville County zoning ordinance, which states permitted uses and activities will be controlled to ensure a high standard for a single-family residential use. It is the commissioner's opinion that a motocross track would not ensure a high standard for residential use as the noise, dust, and frequency of use create a nuisance in the area slated for residential character. Just a few other sections to highlight here. This next one, it is the board's opinion and testimony was received from the appellant in the commissioner's hearing that this variance or opinion would affect the zoning ordinance in that if it were granted, it would violate section 1417, where the uses of land which are not expressly permitted within a zone are expressly prohibited. It would also violate section 1511. The Planning Commission may grant other special exceptions or other special use permits if it is expressly authorized to do so by the provisions of this ordinance. but it shall not grant a special use permit, whether temporarily or permanent, for any use in a zone if the use is not listed therein as a permitted use or is not similar to such permitted uses as determined by section 1511(4)(c) of this ordinance. The Planning Commission cannot grant a variance which is in effect the rezone of a property or in effect an amendment of the zoning ordinance. The motion from the Planning Commission to justify the variance to deny the administrative decision was, I would propose that we accept the appeal against the zoning administrative decision regarding their use of riding motorcycles on their property. Based on the application and finding above, it is the opinion of the Commission that the motion does not address the original question to the zoning administration as to whether or not a motocross track constructed with earth-moving equipment and of considerable scale is an allowed use in the RA2 zone. The statement in the motion, riding motorcycles on their property, is vague. Does that mean they can develop a defined motocross track constructed with earth-moving equipment and of considerable scale and ride on it, or just ride on their property in a reasonable and customary manner? The board has determined the first possibility is not an allowed use within an RA2 zone, and for the second, as was stated in the hearing, we don't deny the right that people have to do casual use of riding their motorcycles on their property. We've never challenged those. Lastly, there's a section in here that talks about, in the variance criteria, the hardship is not the result of any action by the property owner taken after the effective date of this ordinance. The board's opinion is that the property owner rezoned the property from A1 agriculture, which allows a motocross track to be considered after a use hearing, to RA2 residential agriculture, which does not allow for a motocross track to be considered, on October 5th, 2016. It is the opinion of the Commission that there is no hardship claim. The owner rezoned the property, thereby removing the possible use of a motocross track. So to review the decision, based upon the above facts and testimony and evidence submitted, it is the decision of the Bonneville County Commissioners that the finding of the Planning and Zoning Commission were improper and that the request for a motocross track in an RA2 zone be denied. Any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I still need to fully understand in my mind, and I'd like it expressed, of what constitutes the scale. I mean, how do we determine the scale? A lot of this was based on the fact that the scale caused it to fit outside of what would be normal riding use on their property. And so I think that's really what it hinges on, because there was testimony that talked about there are other motocross, very small ones that I'm aware of out there. What makes this one different?
Tell my phone's done ringing. In my mind, the difference is when you get in and use earth moving equipment to construct a track. I mean, it's just not incidental use. The other question I had was, it was talked about in our hearing that incidental use to an R2, and I'm trying to remember the details of it, but they had to actually be living on the property to make it incidental use, to have their family using it.
Yeah, that was discussed in the hearing, and that still stands, that accessory use is for those dwelling on the property.
Oh, what about the farming that's already taken place on the property?
There's no testimony being taken right now. Questions answered. So this should have pointed that out in the beginning. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. We have to base our decision based on what was in the public input at the hearing.
I had a question, Roger, if Mr. Chairman, if I could, of either Steve or or anybody from the planning and zoning staff. If you look down on the 4th page of the decision, the proposed decision, on on the fourth paragraph, basically, on the last sentence that's in quotes, it's not written. There needs to be a word change there. It says, we don't deny the right that people have to do a casual use. It should say, we don't deny that people have a right to a casual use of riding motorcycles on their property. That there's a word to do there that should be changed if we adopt this. Do you follow me?
It was a direct quote from something that was stated in testimony. That's why it's quoted that way. It wasn't just writing, it was a quote from someone in the public hearing, from the zoning administrator.
Okay. So we don't deny the right that people have to do a casual use. What was meant by that person in that hearing was is that, you know, a right's not denied for casual use of a motorcycle on the property, I guess. I'm okay with the decision. I don't have any other questions. The only, you know, I would point out at the hearing, one thing that stood out in my mind was the folks that own that almost 12 acres made an attempt for a buffer. They did make an attempt. While it might not have been an attempt that would satisfy the neighbors, but you know, it did stand out in my mind that they did make an attempt.
Yeah, but looking back at the buffer, a buffer for what? It's a landscape buffer. You know, if you're constructing a motorcycle track and trying to buffer it, you know, what we're saying is that in this, as I read it, is that's the construction of a motorcycle track is not allowed in an R2. They made that decision when they asked for the rezone. I think it was 2016 to a different category for that different type of use because it comes in to fit the residential characteristics. This focuses on the construction, not the incidental use.
And I agree, Mr. Chair. What zone allows for motorcycle tracks in our county? Just if Steve Serr could address that for me, what zone allows for an operation like this, a private motorcycle track, if you will, in the county?
C2 allows for them, and they can be considered in the A1 zone with a use hearing.
So I say in 2016, they went from the A1 to the RA2, pretty much giving up that option. And then there was never a use hearing.
Yeah, there's never
was A1.
Well, I don't have any other questions, Mr. Chair.
One more question. Mr. Chair, I've got to go back to the scale a little bit. So my understanding was the earth moving equipment came in after the Planning and Zoning Commission made the decision to allow. There may have been some before, but the scale increased afterwards.
The scale was there before. The earth moving equipment had been used to define the track before the Planning and Zoning Commission used the hearing. After the hearing by the Planning and Zoning Commission, there was more loads of dirt brought in, is what the appellant stated in their testimony, and that there was earth moving equipment used to create a berm or of sorts on that one side. I don't know if you remember the picture of that or not. And I think they changed some of the structure of the track when they did that as well, when they brought in those second loads of dirt.
Yeah, the aerial photos that they provided on all of that showing the berm also showed a significant amount of earth moving equipment had been used to upgrade and establish a track.
So I guess just to follow up on that and make sure I'm clear, after the Planning and Zoning opinion or decision was made, it went to appeal. There should have been no work done on it during that time, correct? Because it was in appeal, and so the decision of Planning and Zoning Commission was in jeopardy, if you will, or was in question, is a better word.
Correct. It was still in the hearing process, so there was no approval or denial on it at that point.
Okay.
Basically, no no decision one way or the other that was finalized, and the property owner proceeded at his own peril.
Okay, I think
The
it
other-
makes it,
The other thing I want to make sure, and I don't know if we need to put it in this, maybe get your thoughts on, is, there are nuisance laws with levels of noise and things like that, that the neighbors, if they use this for incidental use, that the neighbors can, that would be their action to take on that. Do we need to clarify that, or it's just understood that there are state laws as far as nuisance?
I think it's understood that there's state laws, and our goal here is to address the county laws.
Right, just, yeah, just whether this is an allowed use or not.
Right.
Okay, that was my question. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
no, that was the only questions I had. It's unfortunate when a decision is made by the Planning and Zoning Commission that then we find items that was not addressed correctly. I think it makes it very difficult once a decision has been made at the Planning and Zoning Commission and then is appealed, but that doesn't change the fact that we have to look at the holistic view of it and find where there may have been a mistake. So I can understand that.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, one more discussion point if I could. I said I don't have any questions, but I guess the one that keeps haunting me is 9, before the conclusion, point 9 on page 2. The appellant argued that the Planning and Zoning Commission disregarded the buffer zone in their decision. It should be noted that the buffer zone is not an applicable matter in this case because the property is not zoned B1. What was meant by that? If Steve Serr could address that.
Well, I think Austin can. It's basically there's no buffer zone applied for in this. That's a special zone.
Yeah, so the appeal put that as part of their appeal to the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision. We usually address all of the things they put in the appeal and the finding. And so that was just noting that there's no area in that, there's nothing in that area zoned B1, so that doesn't apply.
Could you translate that, Austin, into another area that may want a motocross track, a private one, in a A1 zone, just for, so
Well,
the
we don't.
proper procedure should be, B1 should be applied in a application.
If you were to have one and they said we want a buffer zone surrounding the motocross track to protect from any residential use or any uses that could be affected, then you could effectively rezone some of the ground surrounding that track to a B1 zone, which allows for uses that wouldn't be affected by the motocross track or whatever you're putting in that area. Correct? Do you want to expound on anything, Steve?
B1 typically is used for developments of large scale that you want to protect a general area. So we had a protected preserve or a vista that we wanted to protect. You can create a buffer zone around that, but basically makes it non-development that protects whatever that use is. In this case, the buffer zone isn't really intended to protect one property owner from another. It's intended to protect a large area from other uses. The buffer zone is different than providing a buffer around the property. A landscaping strip or trees or mountains or visual. It's a zone use. It limits the zones, limits the uses in that zone that can be done to protect the two uses from each other.
Right.
Okay. If there's no other questions, floor is open for a motion.
Mr. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Brian? Couldn't hear it. Brian, did you vote aye?
Aye.
Oh, okay, yeah, you cut out, and I'll vote aye. Okay, for those who are on, we'll be able, once we get these findings signed, you'll be able to get pick up a copy of them. So, thank you, everybody.
Thanks.